Hey guys, it's Mia here, and let me ask you guys a question. Do you like superhero movies? Well, I like a certain superhero movie, or a certain superhero. Does anybody know about Spider-Man? Now, when I talk about Spider-Man, I'm not talking about Elsa and Spider-Man. No, I'm not talking about this. This crap can go right in the trash. This is a no-go and it does not need to exist. I'm talking about the real Spider-Man. The one that does whatever a spider can. Now, for whatever reason, here lately, like a week ago, I got into wanting to watch Spider-Man so bad. Like I was on a Spider-Man kick for some reason. And there are so many different Spider-Man shows. Like, so many. Just look at all of them. Now, I have been a fan of Spider-Man since this Sam Raimi trilogy came out. The first one came out in 2007, I believe, I read. And I've been a fan. That's the movie that got me into Spider-Man. And so I was going through and looking at all of those different Spider-Man shows, and I was going to watch like the originals, like the one from the 60s, the one from the 80s, the one from the 90s. But the sound quality on those ones were horrible, and the animation, I know it was made years and years ago at this point, but it is just terrible and hard to watch. So that is when I came across this, The Spectacular Spider-Man. Now, this one came out in 2008, I think. And I've been a fan, like I said, of the Sam Raimi movies. That's the show that got me into, or that's the movie that got me into Spider-Man. Now, I never really read comics, really. So I didn't get into Spider-Man there, so I don't know much about the comics or anything like that. So don't expect me to have vast knowledge on Spider-Man, because the Sam Raimi trilogy is what got me into Spider-Man. Heck, I even like the scene in Spider-Man 3 where he is just being a jerk and walking down the boulevard in New York, just dancing around like a complete moron. I like that scene. I think it's funny, and I know it's been memed to hell and back, but it's actually pretty funny, and it made me think, well, you're being so ridiculous right now. This is so funny. So I like that scene. And honestly, I also like the scene where he's being a jerk to Mary Jane without meaning to. And just the shock on his face when he figures out that, oh crap, I just shoved Mary Jane to the ground. I need to fix something. Those were good scenes in my opinion, because they showed the symbiote changing Peter to something that he is not really like. So I don't know why those scenes get so much hate, because they were a good emphasis on the fact that Peter is no longer himself. He's turning into something different. But with that out of the way, we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about this, the spectacular Spider-Man. I'm not kidding, I have the theme song stuck in my head because it's spectacular. I'm like, it's not even that good of a theme song, it's just that catchy. Now, this show runs through like almost every single Spider-Man villain that I've ever heard of. You have the classics like Green Goblin, then you have Sandman, then you have Venom, and then I know there's Mysterio, then there's the Vulture, then Kraven the Hunter. I don't know why I blanked on that because he's one of my favorite bad guys. Although I don't like his lion form in this one. I don't know if that's how he originally is in the comics, but I don't like it. I like how they did it in the Amazing Spider-Man. But I mean, And Silver Sable. They have Silver Sable too. And Silver Sable was one of my favorite in the MTV version of Spider-Man. But in this, she's reduced to nothing more than a daddy's girl trying to break her dad out of prison. And the animation for this show is actually pretty decent. I mean, the creepiest thing about it for me is how the characters have no pupils to their eyes, so they kind of look dead in a way. But I mean, I get that's a style choice and that goes with the animation, but that's just my main pet peeve. But I kind of like let that go as I got more into the show and more into the story, because it's actually a pretty good storyline. And like I said, I tried to watch like the originals from the 60s and the 80s and the 90s, but the animation and the sound quality was just so bad it was unwatchable at this point, so I just kind of moved on to this one. And it was an enjoyable watch. I'm pretty sure I binged watched it because I have a bad habit of finding shows I like and then just watching them until I get bored of them. And then I won't watch them for like a year and then come back to them super confused and like, what is going on? What did I miss? I'm so confused. So then I have to go back and rewatch them. But this show is short enough to not need to do that. I think it's only about 2 seasons, and it kind of leaves you on a cliffhanger because you're like, well, oh crap, what's happening now? And apparently when I looked it up, because I was going to see if there's more seasons coming or just how I could watch the other seasons, but apparently it got canceled, and the director of the show was hoping for at least 67 episodes, and we only got, I think it was 26, so that kind of sucks because I really wanted to see the storyline continue. And I think the voice acting is stellar. Mary Jane in the show is like completely different than she is in the Sam Raimi movies, where in the movies she's kind of like, oh, all like supportive and quiet and damsel in distressy. This Mary Jane is kind of like, step off, I can take care of myself, you know? So I like how they did that. And I like how the spider suit looks with all of with the animation. And honestly, like I said, that theme song gets stuck in your head because it's not a good song because it's really repetitive, but because it's so repetitive, it's so catchy. And with running through all the baddies like it does, like it runs through all the baddies so fast, you never feel bored or you never feel like one story is going stale. You feel like, well, they're moving the story nice, there's nice pacing, he's got a good relationship with Aunt May, she's actually there, where in the movie, she's there through a couple of scenes, but she's not there as much as she should be. But in the Spectacular Spider-Man, she is there front and center. She's like always worried about Peter, like, how can I support Peter? Because in this, he's in high school, like he is originally supposed to be. Whereas in the Sam Raimi one, he's all grown up and in college. So he really doesn't need Aunt May as much because he's in college and grown up. But this Peter's in high school. So he has to struggle through high school and having a curfew and having to tell Aunt May, hey, I'm going to be late. He has this alarm that he sets on his spider silk where it has to tell him 10 minutes ahead of time to call Aunt May. And that thing just goes off at the worst time. And he's sitting there in the middle of the battle like, hey, Aunt May, I'm going to be late. I'll swing by later, you know. And he's in the middle of a battle trying to talk to his aunt. And it's like, hang up the phone. But he's like, I gotta talk to Aunt May, because then she'll ground me for a month, and I can't be grounded as Spider-Man, even though he sneaks out the window anyway. But it runs through all the baddies, and I love the relationship between Peter and Aunt May, and just all his other friends. And there's also this struggle of him not being able to tell his friends, or his girlfriend, who he is. So he's constantly late to things. He's constantly unintentionally letting his friends down because he has these Spider-Man responsibilities. He doesn't know when a villain's going to strike. He doesn't know when a criminal is going to rob a bank. He doesn't know. So because he can't tell them, because telling them will put them in more danger than they are if they didn't know, he has to struggle with that. And it's a real struggle that someone like that would have. And there's none of this, his mask completely covers his face. So there's none of this wearing a mask like my glasses and being like, who's that? Who's that? Is that Spider-Man? There's none of that, because he's got a mask that actually covers his face. He's a smart boy, and not everyone in the universe is dumb. And speaking of masks, there's the thought of his voice. Now, you also see this in a lot of Spider-Man and superhero shows. No one ever seems to recognize the superhero's voice. But in the Spectacular Spider-Man, they're constantly like, you sound very familiar. Do I know you? I know you. But they can't pinpoint, oh, this is Peter, because they're not thinking that Puny Parker, as they call him in the show, is the Spectacular Spider-Man. So they don't put two and two together, because they're like, this can't be Parker. He's clumsy. He's dorky. He's a nerd. He's not strong. He's not headstrong. He's not that. So it can't be Peter. He just kind of sounds familiar, you know? But that's something I like. The characters recognize his voice, but they don't put it together because Spider-Man and Peter are so different. And there are times when Peter kind of accidentally reveals some of his Spidey powers, and everyone's like, whoa, how did you do that? Hang on here. So he's like, whoa, I looked too good. I have to intentionally flub this up somehow so they don't start connecting dots. So that is brilliant. I like how the show does that. Let the superhero be recognized through his voice, but have them not connect the dots. I loved that. It put a more realistic spin on that. Because especially his friends, who would spend more time with him, would recognize his voice. The same way you recognize a friend's voice when they call on the phone. And then Venom has always been one of my favorite Spider-Man villains, just because he chills me to the bone. Because he had this connection with Peter through the symbiote. And it's just, Venom is like out to ruin his life because the symbiote wanted Peter. He connected with Peter. And then Peter rejected the symbiote. That's why Eddie, as Venom, wanted Peter dead so bad. And also, with already knowing some of the villains, I knew who some of the villains were as soon as they said the character's name. And I'm like, I can't wait to see your storyline, Eddie, because I know who you are. I was so pumped for Venom's storyline, and it did not let me down. Like, the symbiote took over Peter, and then Peter's like, whoa, you're screwing with me. I'm not this person. I don't need you to be a hero. Rips it off. And then Venom tells Eddie who Peter really is. As Spider-Man, he's Peter. And it's just this, oh my God, is he going to tell someone? What's going to happen? Because now Eddie knows, and Eddie is also out to ruin Peter's life. So I'm like, Eddie knows, Peter's screwed, and just, oh, this show is so well done, even though the animation is not my favorite, and the eyes creep me out. But if you are looking for a Spider-Man show to watch, I highly recommend The Spectacular Spider-Man. Or, like I said, I also grew up watching the MTV version of the new animated series from MTV. I actually have the DVDs. Hi. This one. This is where I was actually introduced to Silver Sable, and she's kick-ass in this one. And then you have the 3-in-1 of all the Spider-Man movies. I highly recommend this one and the Spectacular Spider-Man because they are just so well done. And I recently started watching right after I was done with the Spectacular Spider-Man because, like I said, I'm on a Spider-Man kick. I actually started watching this one, the 2017 one, that everybody seems to hate. And so far, I'm kind of wondering why everyone seems to hate it, because being a fan of Spider-Man since it came out as the movie in 2003, I honestly really am enjoying the other one so far, but I'm not done with it, so that opinion may change when I'm done with it. So we'll see in the next review of the next Spider-Man. Alright, hope to see you next time and hope you guys enjoyed. What's your favorite superhero? Comment down below in the comments to let me know. Bye guys!